I think I didn't do anything wrong, just told him to leave until he could admit he was out of line. I thought it was a simple fight, something we'd laugh about the next day. Instead, a courier showed up that evening with an envelope marked "Petition for Divorce." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. The morning it all started didn't feel like the beginning of the end. It felt like any other Saturday. I was standing at the kitchen counter, scrolling through my phone, pretending not to hear the clatter of dishes Tom was washing behind me. The coffee smelled too strong, like it always did when he made it, and the sound of him humming under his breath just irritated me for no reason. I'd been replaying the dinner from the night before in my head, over and over, the part where he embarrassed me in front of everyone. My sister Nora had been there, my parents too, and Tom just had to challenge me in front of them. I told that harmless little story about how he forgot our anniversary last year, just a quick anecdote, and he had to interrupt, correct me on the details, and say it wasn't forgetting, but being busy closing a contract. Then he said I had exaggerated the whole thing, and everyone laughed. I laughed too, but my stomach burned the whole ride home. So that morning, I decided I wasn't letting it slide. He thought he could correct me in public, make me look like some dramatic wife who invents problems. I wasn't having that. I put my phone down and said, "We need to talk about last night." He didn't turn around right away, just said, "About what?" in that flat tone that drives me insane. I told him he owed me an apology for making me look stupid in front of my family. He rinsed a plate like I hadn't spoken, then finally turned and said, "I didn't make you look stupid. I told the truth." That one sentence set me off. The truth, like he was the keeper of all reason, and I was some hysterical woman twisting everything for attention. I told him, "You made me look like a liar." He said, "You made a joke at my expense. You just didn't like that it wasn't funny." My heart started pounding. I hate when he gets calm like that, when I'm angry and he's composed, like I'm the one out of control. It makes me want to scream just to see him react. I said he could have waited until later to correct me, or at least not done it in front of my dad, who already thinks Tom isn't good enough for me. He just shrugged and said my dad's opinion wasn't his problem. I told him that was exactly his problem. He doesn't care how he comes across to people. He said, "I don't live for your family's approval." And that's when I snapped. Because it wasn't about my family anymore, it was about respect. I said, "You don't live for mine either, apparently." He stared at me for a long second, then picked up his coffee and said quietly, "I'm not fighting with you." That tone, that little quiet dismissal that makes it sound like I'm the one being ridiculous. I followed him into the living room, still talking. I told him I was tired of being made the villain every time he did something wrong. He said he didn't know what I wanted from him. I told him, "An apology. Just admit you were out of line." He said, "I wasn't." That was it. That single word broke something in me. I told him if he couldn't apologize, he could leave until he figured out how to respect me. He blinked like he didn't believe I'd said it, then put his mug in the sink. "You want me to leave?" he asked. I said, "Yes. Maybe then you'll realize I'm serious." I didn't expect him to actually do it. Tom isn't impulsive. He's slow to anger, slow to act. But he walked down the hall, opened the closet, and started pulling out his overnight bag. I followed, still talking, telling him he was overreacting, that I didn't mean forever. He didn't answer. He packed a few shirts, his laptop, charger, and car keys. I said, "You're really just going to walk out?" He said, "You told me to." I could feel my pulse in my throat. It wasn't supposed to go this far. I told him, "You're being dramatic." He said, "Maybe, but at least I'm being honest." Then he zipped the bag and walked out. The door clicked shut, not slammed, not angry, just final. The silence afterward was heavy, almost smug. I stood in the middle of the living room waiting for him to come back, maybe to apologize after realizing how unfair he'd been. But the minutes passed and nothing. I texted Nora, "You won't believe this. I told Tom to leave until he apologized, and he actually left." She replied almost instantly, "Good. Maybe that'll teach him not to talk down to you." That made me feel a little better. At least, someone understood. I poured myself more coffee and started rehearsing how I'd explain it when he came back. I'd say it wasn't about last night, not really. It was about how he never takes responsibility. He always finds some quiet, logical way to twist things back on me. When we fought before, he'd just go silent until I caved. This time, I wasn't caving. An hour passed. I checked his location on the family app. He was at a hotel near downtown. My chest tightened, but I told myself it didn't mean anything. He just needed to cool off. I even laughed when Nora called and said, "He's just being petty. Let him sweat a bit." I agreed. I told her I was fine, that maybe a night apart would remind him who was really keeping this marriage running. But as the day went on, the house started feeling too empty. His toothbrush was still by the sink, his jacket still on the chair, but the air felt wrong without him moving through it. I called once, straight to voicemail. I left a message saying we needed to talk like adults, that he was taking things too far. I didn't say sorry because I hadn't done anything wrong. I was standing up for myself. That's what I kept repeating in my head. I'm allowed to stand up for myself. When the kids came back from my parents' house that evening, they asked where Dad was. I said he was staying with a friend. My son Ethan asked if it was because of the argument last night. I told him not to worry, that adults fight sometimes, but everything would be fine. My daughter Lila didn't say anything, just went to her room clutching the stuffed bear Tom gave her last Christmas. Later that night, I sat on the couch scrolling through photos of us. Our wedding, birthdays, vacations. In every picture, he looked steady, calm, holding me like he was the anchor. I wondered when exactly that started to annoy me instead of comfort me. I drafted another text. "You can come back now. Let's talk." Then I deleted it. He should be the one reaching out, not me. I poured myself a glass of wine and called Nora again. She said I was right to draw a line, that men like Tom always come crawling back once they realize they've lost control. I laughed and said she was probably right. Still, my hands were shaking when I hung up. By midnight, the silence in the house felt unbearable. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, trying to imagine him opening the door, putting his bag down, saying he was sorry. I pictured what I'd say, something gracious, something that still made me look strong. But no door opened. When my phone buzzed around 1 a.m., my heart leapt, thinking it was him. It wasn't. It was a text from Tom. Just 6 words. "You'll have my answer sooner, Lara." I read it over and over, trying to decide if it was a threat or a promise. The words didn't make sense yet. I told myself he was still angry, that he'd cool off by morning. But deep down, I felt something shift. For the first time, I wondered if maybe he wasn't coming back at all. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight spilling through the curtains and the cold half of the bed still untouched. The first thing I did was check my phone. No messages, no missed calls, nothing. I told myself that was fine. Tom liked his quiet time. Maybe he was still cooling off, but after breakfast, when I saw his toothbrush still missing from the sink and his car not in the driveway, it started to feel more permanent than I wanted to admit. I called Nora. She picked up on the second ring, sounding way too cheerful. I told her he still hadn't come home. She said, "Good, let him see what it feels like when someone stands up to him." I laughed weakly and said, "Yeah, he'll realize soon enough." But even as I said it, my stomach twisted. I spent the rest of the morning cleaning the house like a maniac. I vacuumed, folded laundry, even organized the pantry, anything to make it look like I was in control. Around noon, I sat down with my laptop and posted a quote on Facebook, "Never apologize for knowing your worth." It got 27 likes, mostly from my co-workers and a few of Nora's friends. That gave me a small rush. At least people would see I wasn't the one falling apart. When my mum called later, I expected sympathy. Instead, she asked if I'd really told Tom to leave. I said yes, but only because he refused to apologize. She sighed, the kind of sigh that made me feel 12 years old again. "Alara, men don't respond to ultimatums," she said. "You could have talked to him." I bit my tongue, trying not to snap. "Mom, he embarrassed me in front of everyone. What was I supposed to do, pretend it was fine?" She said quietly, "Maybe just let it go." That made me furious. Why was everyone always telling me to let things go? Tom never got that advice. He got treated like the logical one, the victim of my moods. I told her I wasn't the problem and hung up before she could lecture me. By the afternoon, I couldn't stop replaying every conversation Tom and I had ever had where he made me feel small. The time he told me I was being dramatic when I cried about him missing dinner. The time he said, "You twist things until you're right." I started writing a message to him explaining all of it, every little thing he'd done to make me feel disrespected, but halfway through I deleted it. He didn't deserve that much energy. Instead, I called Nora again. She told me she'd already mentioned what happened to a few of our friends. "Everyone thinks he sounds controlling," she said. "You're better off proving you can manage without him." That made me feel powerful for a moment, like maybe I was better off. When I went to work on Monday, I carried that energy with me. I told my coworker Jasmine that Tom and I were taking space because he had trouble with my independence. She gave me a sympathetic nod and said, "Men like that never last when the woman knows her own mind." I smiled and told myself she was right. During lunch, I checked my phone again, still no text. But there was a notification from Instagram. A new follower, AdrianCole.fit. I recognized him instantly. Adrian, the instructor from the gym. I'd joined his weekend class a few months ago. He was one of those confident types who made everything sound like a personal compliment. He'd called me disciplined once, just because I held a plank for a few extra seconds. I clicked on his profile. Pictures of weights, beach sunsets, motivational quotes. I followed him back before I even thought about it. 10 minutes later, he sent me a message. "Rough Monday. You looked distracted in class yesterday." I told him my husband and I were having issues. He replied, "His loss. You've got fire." I knew I shouldn't have answered, but it felt good. Someone seeing me, not criticizing me. For the first time all weekend, I smiled. That evening, Diane called, Tom's mother. The conversation started polite and quickly went sour. She asked if I knew where Tom was staying. I said no. She said, "He told me you kicked him out." I said, "He left because he couldn't admit he was wrong." She paused, then said, "He's never been one to lie, Alara." That made my blood boil. "So you think I'm lying?" I asked. She said, "I think you always need someone to blame." I hung up on her. Then I threw my phone on the couch and cried, not because I missed Tom, but because everyone was acting like I'd done something unforgivable. I told myself I had every right to be upset. I wasn't going to apologize just to make people comfortable. Later that night, I went to Nora's condo. She poured wine and told me to relax. We sat on her balcony gossiping about everyone we knew. She said Tom was too rigid, that he needed to learn humility. I said, exactly, though something about the way she said it made me uneasy. Nora could be vicious when she wanted to be, turning people's pain into entertainment. Still, I laughed along. When she went to get another bottle, I texted Adrian again. I said I was staying at my sister's place for a few days. He asked if I wanted to grab coffee sometime. I stared at the message for a long time, telling myself it was harmless. Coffee wasn't cheating. Coffee was just talking. But I didn't reply. Not yet. When I got home later, I noticed something strange. The living room lamp that had always flickered slightly when Tom turned it on, it didn't flicker. He'd fixed it before leaving. Somehow that small act made me angrier than anything else. He couldn't even leave something imperfect. It was like he'd made sure his absence would look clean, deliberate. I scrolled through our old messages before bed. The last one from him before the fight was just a reminder to pick up milk. Such an ordinary thing. I almost laughed at how stupid it all was. All this over one dinner, one argument, one missing apology. Before I fell asleep, my phone buzzed again. A message from an unknown number. It was Tom. "You'll have my answer soon." The same words from before, but seeing them again made my chest tighten. I typed back, "Don't be dramatic. We can fix this." I stared at the blinking cursor, then erased it. He'd respond when he was ready. In the morning, I woke to new notifications, likes on my Facebook post, a heart emoji from Adrian under my latest selfie, and a message from Jasmine asking if I was doing okay. I replied with a smiling emoji and said, "Never better." But deep down, something felt off, like I'd set a story in motion that wasn't going to end the way I thought. The house was too still. The coffee tasted bitter, and as I scrolled through Tom's contact photo, the one I'd taken years ago where he was smiling at me like I was the whole world, I suddenly couldn't remember the last time I'd looked at him like that. I told myself it didn't matter. He'd come around. They always do. Still, when I checked his location on the app again and saw the pin gone completely, his account deactivated, I felt a flicker of panic under my skin. Not because I missed him, I told myself, just because I hated losing control of the narrative. By noon, I'd convinced myself he was bluffing. I even posted another quote. "Sometimes people walk away because they can't handle your strength." It got even more likes than the first one. But that night, as I lay in bed, the words he'd texted echoed again and again in my head. "You'll have my answer soon." And for the first time, I wondered what kind of answer he was planning to give. By the end of that week, I was already telling people I was basically separated. It sounded cleaner than saying my husband had left after I pushed him out. People responded with sympathy instead of judgment when I phrased it that way. At school, my co-workers treated me like a tragic heroine, another woman married to a man who couldn't handle her strength. I let them believe it. Adrian kept messaging me, little check-ins that felt harmless at first. "Did you sleep okay? Don't let stress steal your glow." That sort of thing. I told myself it was friendly encouragement, but I started replying faster each time. I even started dressing differently for the gym. Nicer leggings, light makeup, hair done instead of in a messy bun. The first time he complimented my perfume, I said it was nothing, but inside I felt something tighten, something close to satisfaction. Nora said I needed to get out more and reminded me that Tom wasn't my responsibility anymore. I half believed her. On Saturday, she came over to help me rearrange the living room. We laughed while we moved furniture, pretending we were reclaiming my space. She took a photo of me holding a glass of wine in front of the newly arranged couch and captioned it, "New beginnings for my strong sister." It got more likes than any picture I'd posted in months. I noticed Adrian liked it too. That night, he sent me another message. "You look happier lately. Freedom suits you." I stared at it for a long time. Then I wrote back, "Sometimes you have to lose something to find yourself." He responded with a winking emoji, and I went to sleep smiling for the first time in days. Monday morning, I walked into school feeling lighter. My friend Jasmine noticed immediately and said I seemed different. I told her I'd been focusing on self-care. She raised her eyebrows but didn't press. Later, during recess duty, she asked quietly if I thought Tom might come back. I said, "If he knows what's good for him, he will." But deep down, I didn't know anymore if I wanted him to. That afternoon, I met Adrian for coffee after class. It wasn't planned, not officially, but he'd texted saying he was nearby, and I told myself it would be rude not to meet. We talked for an hour, about life, ambition, how people settle too quickly. He said most people live half asleep in their relationships. I nodded, pretending I wasn't one of them. When I left, I felt flushed and alive. The next few days blurred into a rhythm I didn't recognize but didn't hate. Work, gym, texting Adrian, dinner alone. Sometimes he'd drive me home after class and wait until I was safely inside before leaving. I told myself it was just kindness. Then one night, I invited him in for a drink. We didn't cross any lines, not really. We just sat on the couch talking. He told me I deserved better than someone who made me feel small. I didn't disagree. When he left, I watched him walk to his car and thought, Tom never looked at me like that anymore. The next morning, I posted a picture from the gym, smiling beside Adrian. The caption said, "Surround yourself with people who lift you up." I didn't think much of it until Nora called an hour later, saying Tom had apparently seen it. "He still follows you?" I asked. She said, "Not anymore. He unfollowed you right after." I told her I didn't care, but the truth was I did. I kept checking my phone all day, waiting for some kind of message. Nothing. When I got home, the kids were quiet, almost cautious. My mom had picked them up from school and said Tom had dropped off some clothes for them. He hadn't come inside, just left the bag at the door. That night, I went to the kitchen and found a small envelope on the counter. It wasn't sealed, just sitting there. Inside was a folded note in Tom's handwriting. "For the kids, school supplies fund. Don't touch it." Under it was a receipt showing he'd opened a new account in his name only. My stomach turned cold. I called him immediately. Straight to voicemail, I texted, "We need to talk. You can't just do things without consulting me." No reply. I sent another. "You're acting childish." Then another. "If you're trying to hurt me, congratulations." Still nothing. Around midnight, I poured a glass of wine and opened my messages with Adrian. I told him Tom was being impossible. He said, "That's what happens when men lose control. Don't let him pull you back in." I wrote back, "He's not. I'm fine." But my hands were shaking. The next day at school, rumors started. Jasmine pulled me aside, whispering that someone had mentioned seeing me with Adrian at the cafe. "People are talking," she said gently. "They think you're moving on really fast." I told her it wasn't her business, that people loved to invent stories, but I could feel the heat rising in my face. That evening, I drove to Nora's place again, ranting about how Tom was turning people against me. She asked if I was sure it was him. I said yes. Who else would it be? She frowned but didn't answer. When I got home, the lights were on. For a second, I thought Tom had come back, but when I walked in, he was just standing by the door, holding a duffel bag. My heart jumped. "Finally," I said, "you're ready to talk." He didn't answer, didn't even look angry. He just set the bag down and said he was dropping off the kids' things. Then his eyes shifted to the counter, where my phone lit up with a message from Adrian. I saw his jaw tighten slightly. I opened my mouth to explain, but he spoke first. "Don't bother," he said quietly. "I'm not here to argue." He turned and walked out before I could say another word. The sound of the door closing hit harder than the first time. I ran after him, but his car was already backing out of the driveway. When I went back inside, the message from Adrian was still glowing on my screen. "You deserve peace." I deleted it without replying. Later that night, I called Nora again. She was quiet for a moment, then said, "Elara, he's done, isn't he?" I told her not to be ridiculous. But when I hung up, I noticed the same note still lying on the counter. Tom's handwriting, steady, controlled. I traced the letters with my finger and felt a sudden, sharp fear I couldn't explain. Before bed, I checked my email. There was a new message from a law firm with Tom's name in the subject line. I didn't open it. I just stared at the screen, whispering that he was bluffing. But a part of me already knew. Whatever this was, he'd planned it long before I realized I'd lost control. I didn't open the email that night, but I thought about it constantly. By morning, the curiosity was unbearable. I sat at the kitchen table, coffee going cold, and finally clicked it. It wasn't a message from Tom. It was from his lawyer. The subject line said, "Notice of legal separation and asset disclosure." The words blurred for a second. I reread the first paragraph, my pulse hammering in my ears. It was real. He wasn't bluffing. I called Nora immediately. She picked up, still half asleep. "He filed something," I said, pacing the kitchen. "Like official paperwork. He's actually trying to separate everything." She yawned and said, "He's just scaring you. He won't go through with it." I wanted to believe her, but Tom wasn't the type to threaten. If he'd sent a lawyer, it meant he was already sure. At work, I couldn't focus. I kept checking my phone, waiting for him to message me. Around lunchtime, Diane called again. I almost didn't answer, but something in me needed to hear her voice. She said, "Tom told me he's filing for divorce." The word hit like a slap. Divorce. Not separation, not a break, divorce. I told her he was being ridiculous, that this was just another example of him refusing to communicate like an adult. She said, "He's communicating now, just not in the way you like." I snapped, "You've always taken his side." She sighed. "No, Ilara, I'm just tired of watching my son carry all the blame." Then she hung up. That night, I couldn't eat. The kids were quiet again, watching me like they could feel something was wrong. Ethan asked if Dad was coming for dinner this week. I said yes automatically, but even as the word left my mouth, I knew it was a lie. I opened a bottle of wine and sat on the couch scrolling through my messages. Adrian had texted, "You okay?" I typed back, "He's trying to divorce me," but then deleted it. I didn't want to sound desperate. Instead, I wrote, "Rough day, need a distraction." He replied with a picture of the gym at night, empty, calm, and said, "Come by. We'll train it out." I almost went. I even changed into leggings before stopping myself. It felt wrong now, like crossing some invisible line I couldn't uncross. The next morning, an envelope slid through the mail slot. It was thick, printed on heavy paper with the same law firm's name. Notice of financial separation. I sat down right there on the floor and read every word. He'd already closed our joint savings account. The mortgage was being refinanced under his name alone. My credit card, the one linked to his account, was cancelled. I felt my stomach drop. He hadn't done this overnight. He'd planned it. I called him, shaking. It went straight to voicemail. "Tom, what are you doing?" I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You can't just freeze me out of our life like this. We have kids. You're not being rational." No answer. I texted right after, "You're making a huge mistake. We can still fix this. Nothing." By afternoon, I got a message from our mutual friend, Alice. She said she'd seen Tom at the courthouse. "He looked calm," she wrote. "Just wanted you to know." Calm. That word again. Always calm, while I felt like the world was spinning apart. That night, I went through every drawer and cabinet, looking for something, any clue of what he might do next. In the filing cabinet, I found a stack of documents in his handwriting, budget notes, custody guidelines, even a printout of some online parenting plan template. The dates went back weeks before our fight. My chest tightened as I realized he hadn't just reacted. He'd been preparing for this. When I told Nora, she said, "You're overthinking. He's bluffing to make you crawl back." But the more she talked, the less I believed it. Tom didn't bluff. The next few days turned into a blur of emails, phone calls, and panic. I finally called the lawyer listed on the letter, pretending it was just a misunderstanding. The assistant who answered said, "Mr. Voss has requested all communication go through our office." Her tone was polite, but distant, as if I were a stranger. I asked if he planned to talk to me directly. She said, "Mrs. Voss, your husband prefers to keep things professional." Professional? Like I was a business contract he was dissolving. That night, my mother came over to watch the kids while I tried to make sense of the paperwork. She read through a few pages, then looked at me with pity. He's protecting himself, she said. Legally, financially, emotionally. I said, he's punishing me. She shook her head. He's done being punished. Her words stung. I told her she didn't understand, that Tom had pushed me into this by being cold for years. She didn't argue. She just packed up her things and said softly, "You always have a reason, Ilara." The following morning, Jasmine stopped me in the hallway at school. She looked uneasy. People are saying Tom filed because of, well, pictures. My stomach lurched. What pictures? I asked. She hesitated. The ones from the gym. You and Adrian. They've been circulating in the local parents group. I could barely breathe. I checked Facebook the second I got home. There it was. Someone had reposted my photo with Adrian under a thread about teachers setting examples. The comments were brutal. Words like unprofessional and inappropriate filled the screen. My hands went cold. That night, Nora came over again, but for once she didn't have much to say. She scrolled through her phone and muttered, "You might need a lawyer of your own." I laughed too loud, said she was overreacting, but inside, I felt the truth settle heavy in my chest. The next day, a courier arrived at the door with another thick envelope. This one stamped custody proposal. I barely made it through the first paragraph before I started shaking. He wasn't taking the kids away, not completely. He was offering shared custody, but the terms made it clear. He was the stable parent. I called his mother, furious. "How could you let him do this?" I shouted. She said, "I didn't let him do anything. You did." Then she hung up. When the house went quiet again, I sat at the table staring at the papers spread out before me. Every page was neat, precise, emotionless. It wasn't revenge, it was order. Tom's kind of order. He was rewriting our life without me in it. For the first time since that night I told him to leave, I felt something close to fear. Not of losing him, but of realizing he'd already built a world that didn't include me. And all I could do now was watch him sign it into existence. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those papers. Clean lines, stamped seals, my name written like it belonged in a file cabinet. By morning, I looked like I hadn't slept in days. The school principal called me into his office before first bell. He said there'd been concerns from parents about my social media presence. My stomach dropped. I asked what he meant, and he showed me the same photo from the gym, the one of me smiling beside Adrian. Someone had sent it anonymously. I tried to laugh it off, saying it was harmless, that people were twisting things. He didn't look convinced. "You're entitled to your private life," he said, "but when it becomes public, it affects perception." I wanted to scream. Perception. That was all anyone cared about now, how things looked, not what they were. At lunch, Jasmine stopped by my classroom with a coffee. She looked uncomfortable. "Tom came by the office this morning," she said. I blinked. "What?" "He needed copies of some of the kids' school forms. He looked calm." That word again. Calm, she added. "He didn't ask about you, just the forms." I laughed, sharp and too loud. "Of course he didn't. He's probably thrilled to look like the composed one." She didn't answer, just touched my shoulder gently before leaving. When I got home that afternoon, there was another envelope waiting, this one thinner, handwritten instead of typed. I tore it open expecting another threat, but it was just a single note. "Please review attached documents for disclosure meeting." Underneath was a photocopy of messages between me and Adrian. My throat went dry. They weren't even explicit, but they were enough, flirtatious, suggestive, full of things that could be twisted into evidence. I sat on the floor, staring at the printouts. He'd gone through my phone somehow, or maybe he'd had access all along. I called him immediately, voice shaking. "Tom, what is this? Are you spying on me now?" He didn't answer, so I left a voicemail. "You're really trying to destroy me over a few texts? You're sick." That night, Nora came over, and I shoved the papers at her. Look at this. He's building a case against me. She skimmed through them, then sighed. Honestly, Alara, it doesn't look great. I glared at her. You're supposed to be on my side. She said quietly, I am. But you keep giving him ammunition. That made me furious. So now it's my fault, I snapped. He humiliated me, abandoned me, and now he's pretending to be some victim while I'm the villain. Nora didn't argue. She just said, You need a lawyer. I didn't want a lawyer. I wanted Tom to call and admit this was all for show, that he just wanted to scare me. But the next morning, I got another message from his attorney scheduling a mediation appointment. It was official now. The meeting was at a law office downtown. I wore my nicest blazer, tried to look composed. When I walked in, Tom was already there, sitting across the table with his lawyer. He didn't even look angry, just distant. I wanted to shake him, to make him show some emotion. Instead, I said coldly, I see you've gone all out. He said, It's time to be practical. His lawyer went through everything. Assets, accounts, custody. My name appeared less and less as the pages went on. They had records of my spending, screenshots of messages, even timestamps showing I'd been at Adrian's apartment after work. I tried to explain it wasn't what it looked like, but no one was listening. Tom stayed silent the entire time. When the meeting ended, I followed him outside. You're proud of yourself, aren't you? I said. He turned to me, expression unreadable. I'm not proud, I'm done. Then he walked away, leaving me standing on the steps with the city noise buzzing around me. That night, I couldn't bear to be alone, so I called Adrian. He answered on the second ring, cheerful as ever. I told him everything, every humiliating detail. He paused, then said, Maybe you should lay low for a while. I don't want to make things worse. I blinked. Lay low? You think I did something wrong? He said, I just don't want drama. That was the moment I realized he wasn't going to stand by me. He was already distancing himself. Right, I said quietly. Wouldn't want you to get your hands dirty. Then I hung up. The next morning, my mother stopped by. She didn't say much, just handed me a grocery bag and asked if I'd eaten. I told her I didn't need pity. She said, It's not pity, it's concern. I snapped that Tom was turning everyone against me. She said, He doesn't need to. You're doing that yourself. After she left, I sat on the couch staring at the quiet house. Every shadow reminded me of him. The shoes still by the door, the half-empty bottle of his cologne on the dresser. I tried calling him again, but the call went straight to voicemail. His message was different now, a generic automated greeting. He'd changed his number. Later that day, a courier arrived at my door with another envelope. My heart pounded as I opened it, but it wasn't more paperwork. It was a final notice for mediation and a short typed letter from Tom. Everything you wanted, freedom, space, peace, is yours now. Please stop contacting me directly. All matters will go through representation. I sank to the floor, clutching the letter. The words were cold but neat, exactly like him. The kind of calm that used to comfort me and now felt like a blade. That night, I went online to check our shared photo albums. Every picture of us together was gone, deleted. Our anniversary posts, our vacation shots, all erased. My entire life with him looked like it had never happened. I refreshed the page again and again, hoping it was a glitch. It wasn't. The next morning, as I was leaving for work, a white envelope was waiting on the doorstep. The return address wasn't the lawyer's this time. It was the county courthouse. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a single line. Petition for divorce, filed and recorded. I dropped it, the paper fluttering onto the welcome mat. I stood there in my coat, the cold morning air cutting through me. For weeks, I'd told everyone he was overreacting, that he'd calm down. Now the proof was in my hands, final, unshakable. I thought I'd feel anger or panic, but all I felt was quiet disbelief. Somehow, while I'd been spinning stories and chasing validation, Tom had turned silence into power, and now his silence had ended everything. The courthouse was colder than I expected. Everything smelled like paper and disinfectant. I sat in the hallway outside the mediation room, holding the final decree. My lawyer said it was straightforward, that Tom had agreed to fair terms, no surprises. That almost made it worse. He hadn't punished me, he'd just erased me. When he walked past with his attorney, he nodded politely, like I was someone he used to know from work. No anger, no triumph, just quiet distance. I wanted to call his name, to make him look at me, but the words stuck in my throat. After it was over, I drove home and stood in the empty living room. The walls looked bigger somehow. His shoes were gone. His scent was gone. Even the photo hooks were bare. A courier had dropped off one last envelope while I was gone, my copy of the signed decree. I traced his signature at the bottom, neat and steady. The date written beside it stopped me cold, the same day I told him to leave. He'd already decided. All my shouting, my threats, my pride, it had never mattered. I whispered into the silence. You should have just apologized, knowing he already had. With that signature. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.